only have 6 minutes, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes of stories and then 4 minutes of ranting. And that might flip depending on how we go. So my work, the bulk of my work has really been supporting children at the youngest age, birth through 8 years old. If people don't know, that's actually the definition of early childhood education is birth to 8 years old, which means infants through 3rd grade. So let's really just think about how we're making policies and how people are thinking about 2nd and 3rd graders and think about them in the context of being in early childhood, which was made that way because of research that talks about their development, their brain development, their emotional development, their language development. It's all early childhood. So we need to think about reclaiming that. So some of those unintended consequences, I actually don't want to talk about the tests and the impact to the kids in testing grades. I want to talk about the impact to kids who are not in testing grades. So I have a problem where people tell me stories. People that I don't know and who have no idea that I actually am involved in this work just tell me stories. In the grocery store, walking down the street, at the laundromat, at the gym. I want them to stop because it's very painful to me actually to hear these stories and just to hear the consistency, the threads that I'm able to weave through all of these stories. But that's why I'm actually telling you, because I don't want to carry this alone, and I want us all to understand that when you walk out of here, it's not just about your personal experience or the people around you. You need to know the stories of the people who are not in this room, who are hurting, the children who are crying, and the parents that are struggling and saying, I don't know what else I can do. So I'll start with one. I worked with a teacher who taught pre-K and then went to kindergarten. A few weeks ago, I was talking with her, actually, no, it was last Monday, and I said, so what's going on in kindergarten? And I've heard throughout the year how hard it's been for her, and I keep trying to remind her it's not her, it's everyone else in her space that is having these inappropriate expectations. But finally she said to me, well, you know, they were doing this assessment, that's the MOSL, right, the measure of student learning, so you know, kindergartners are getting standardized tests too, whether you know it or not, and they don't need your permission, so we need to think about that. So she said, well, they were looking at them and the kids wrote about their families instead of responding to the family in the text in an abstract way, and then people were scoring them at like a 32. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? They're 5. They should talk about their family when asked what is a family, right? Like, but they weren't referring to the text in an abstract way. So, you know, really. So then I started yelling. I said I was going to rant a little bit. So I started yelling at her or with her on the phone saying, you know child development. You know this isn't normal. Where are they getting this from? Well, I don't care if 7 of your 26 can do that. What else can they not do? Can they, you know, make friends? Do they know how to say, I need this, or I need that, or this is my emotion, or I'm really great at science and art? Can they say these other things? And she said, actually, and I asked about physical development too, and she said, you know what? And she started crying, which got me crying. She said, my girls cannot jump rope because they're afraid to pick their feet up off of the ground because they don't have PE and they don't experience that. She said, and over the last year, the 6 fire drills we had, my kindergarten class came out last because they couldn't walk down the steps with alternating feet at 5 and 6 years old because they're not getting physical education. They're not getting a chance to move their bodies. They're expected to sit in their seats and do seat work, do abstract reasoning work that makes no sense, especially for her children that don't speak English, but have to do this in English. And she'll be about to think about that. So that's crazy. I cried as if we'd rather have kids be dead, not coming out for a fire drill, you know, because they can't walk, but we care so much about test scores. Like, it's insane, right? I know, it's crazy. So then we've got another one, a kindergarten boy who keeps getting put out of his classroom and nobody knows what's wrong. Why is he, you know, having these behavior issues? Well, I ended up speaking with him, and after he got over his frustration, he needed to do some breathing, some stretching. He said, I can't write well. I can't write good. I write too big and it doesn't fit in the lines and nobody will help me. He's 5. That's completely normal, but not in this universe that we're living in. So I also heard of a child who was repeatedly fainting due to testing stress coming up next year. His parent was like, we're totally opting out. And that's in Brownsville, and I have others in Crown Heights. So just to understand, like, this is not only about 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, this is about our entire educational system. We are losing allowing children their natural natural-born right to be where they are developmentally, and it's our responsibility as adults to support them to grow from where they are, not against random standards and tests that were not written by people with education experience. That I work in, we have infants and toddlers, and we were told, can you please make sure the babies don't cry for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday too loudly because it'll disturb the testing kids. Like, really, I mean, this is like crazy. It's crazy. What do you mean? You know, first of all, you shouldn't be taking a test where if you hear some noise that it prevents you from being able to function. But clearly, these are the conditions that kids are operating under. So what I want to say is like, low-income children, dual language learners, English language learners, children with special needs, children whose multiple intelligences are not about writing, reading, and math, children who express themselves more clearly through their bodies or through art, they're not being supported and they're being struck down by the system. They're showing all signs of toxic stress, which everyone wants to talk about neuroscience, right? Well, let's not talk about, you know, dealing with it with young children in poverty. Let's talk about the toxic stress that children and families are dealing with when it comes to this high-stakes testing and this narrowing of curriculum. You don't get relief when you don't get art, okay? So we really have to think about that. So the other thing is I'm doing my third master's, and I'm telling everybody, I'm shouting from the rooftops now, because I'm like, this one I'm earning. So really hard, and this last one is in policy, and I just came from a class, which is why I was late, education and social policy. So I'm sitting in here saying, why are policy people not looking at the research? Because you know what research I read just a few weeks ago? Test scores don't correlate to college graduation or to higher wages in the labor market. Test scores, you know, they've studied, they look at the test scores, the test makers themselves say, or the people who are, you know, studying them say, they're not giving you all the information you need to have a value-added measure for a teacher. You need to do some other things, but you can't make policies, you know, that don't match what the research says. So I'm gonna build something, and I invite you all to join me when I'm done, and take these stories and open up your ears and listen, walk out of your community and know that just because your kid is okay, it's not enough. We're all in this together. This is one community.